Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Community Environmental Council's Environmental Hub. My name is Farah Stack. I am one of the Climate Program Associates here at CEC. We are so excited to hear from Dr. Flavia Maya this evening about the incredible movement she is creating for climate justice, for gender justice, and for transformative systems change. This presentation is taking place on the unceded lands of the Chumash and all their peoples. We acknowledge that this land on which we live and work are the traditional homelands of Indigenous peoples, including the Chumash peoples. This land today is the result of the erasures and exclusions of Indigenous peoples. And as we come together to bring awareness to issues of equity and justice, we recognize that the Chumash people and so many other Indigenous communities are still fighting to dismantle the legacies of settler colonialism in their tribal territories. We pay our respects to the Chumash peoples and their elders, past, present, and future, who call this place their home. And a huge thank you to our partners. This event is being put on by CEC and Talea Insights. At CEC, our mission is to build on-the-ground momentum to reverse the threats of the climate crisis. We work together with our community and dedicated partners to bring greater climate justice, climate-smart agriculture, cleaner energy, and climate education to the Central Coast. I met Flavia a few years ago during a climate leadership program, and her commitment to empowering frontline women's leadership, advancing climate justice, and regenerating ecosystems has been a personal inspiration to me and in my work at CEC. CEC and Dr. Maya both share a common vision of empowering communities through grassroots leadership and systems change. And we are so honored to have her here and share her vision with us tonight. And I'd like to pass it off to Caitlin Ryan to just briefly share about tonight's other sponsor, Talea Insights.
Wonderful. Thank you, Farah. Thank you all for joining us tonight. As Farah said, I am Caitlin Ryan. I'm an associate at Talea Insights, which is an impact consulting firm. Think traditional consulting, business consulting firm, but in the impact social change space. So we work with social entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, those that have a vision for social good, and we help make it happen. We also offer philanthropic and family advising as well. I had the absolute pleasure of meeting both Farah and Flavia when I was one of their expedition leaders in Antarctica a couple years ago. And I was immediately inspired by their leadership and passion. So I love that I have the opportunity to work with both of them again and continue our work together. Okay, for the main act now, I'll turn it over. So I'm going to introduce our moderator, Nadra Ehrman, who is incredibly impressive. So I've written down a couple notes, but I'm sure that I'm not going to do her justice and list everything that she's accomplished. But Nadra has been a board member here at CEC for 6 years. She is a Catherine Harvey Fellow alum, and she's currently the sustainability director of the Tobes Group, and has been in the sustainability space for many years now. So we couldn't think of a better person to moderate than Nadra. So I'll welcome you on stage. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I missed the cue to sit down, so made a little dramatic entrance there. So thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Farah. I am so honored to be here with you all tonight. When preparing for this event, I thought about a quote from the educator, poet, author, and feminist Bell Hooks, and it states, "Without love, our efforts to liberate ourselves and our community from oppression and exploitation are doomed." Dr. Flavia Maya embodies this wisdom. She courageously leads with her heart and invites us to do the same by taking joy and love and integrating them with action and impact. As a PhD, founder of Filia du Sol, Dalai Lama Fellow, and Obama Scholar, among many other accolades, She has shown the world that she has the acumen, the intelligence, and the dedication to be the change that she wants to see in the world. Creating the first climate school for women, she amplifies generational wisdom that has been systematically overlooked and infuses it with access to technical skills and resources, and begs the question, what would the world look like if we all honored and acted upon the voices that are being most impacted by climate change? By standing on the leading edge, she invites us to examine how we show up in the world and helps us recalibrate our vision for the future. She did that for me. I first met her, similar to Farah and Caitlin, we all have our when we first met Flavia stories, at the Talea Insights event in May of last year. And her vision of moving through the world with love, providing women who are already doing the work with the necessary resources, and recognizing that her leadership and activism was inseparable from her deep connection to the land stirred something deep within me. I'm gonna go out on a limb, but it felt like the song Killing Me Softly. Anyone familiar? Roberta Flack, then Lauryn Hill, not killing in a bad way, in a good way. It's hard to explain, but what it felt like was remembering something that I've always known. And I'm not alone. Everyone who meets Dr. Flavia Maya is pulled in by her message, her work, her vision, which is why we are all here tonight, right? So I've talked enough. It's time for you to receive her message firsthand. So for those of you who have heard her speak before, and for those of you who are hearing her for the first time, I'd like to introduce to you the change maker, the climate leader, the literal force of nature, Dr. Flavia Maya.
Quando olhei a terra ardendo, com a fogueira de São João, eu perguntei a Deus do céu por que tamanha judiação. When I saw the earth burning as if it was St. John's fire, a bonfire, I asked God in the skies, why such a harsh judgment? There was no water, I lost my cattle, my horse died of thirst. Today I am miles away on a sad loneliness. I wait for the rain to fall again so I can go back to my sertão. I look at my grandpa and he says, play Asa Branca again. I was a kid, so I didn't know why he loved this song so much. But now I realize that this is the song that represents the Brazilian Northeast, our land, where we come from. It talks about drought, desertification, climate migration. And I feel like at that moment, my grandpa felt like he was seen, he was heard. Maybe he felt loved because I was there witnessing his story, the story of our ancestors. So for me, climate change is something that I know with my head, but also with my heart, with my hands, with my body. I carry on my DNA the impacts of climate change. My family had to migrate from Ceará, a state in Brazil, to Piauí. They were trying to get to the Amazon, but the part of my family that I come from, they didn't end up in the Amazon. They end up in Piauí, where I am now. This is an extremely hot region in Brazil, it's a climate hotspot. And every year of my life, temperature only increased. This is not just about thermal discomfort, it's also about less food, less water, more conflict, more social violence, more inequality. 94% of the Brazilian Northeast is vulnerable to the desertification. So there is a desert as big in size as England in the Brazilian Northeast. And this is now, this is not in the future. Today, just 1% of the population of the world lives in areas that are extremely hot. They are too hot to live. But in 2070, it will be 19%. So what scientists are saying now is that up to 3 billion people will be pushed outside of the human climate niche, meaning the areas where we have been living for 6,000 years, and now we cannot live there anymore. Climate migration will reshape America. And a lot of what's get reported at the US border with Mexico as an immigration crisis, it's linked to the climate crisis. It's people who are running out of water in extremely dry regions in Central America, and they end up going hungry and need to cross the border. No one wants to leave their places. I don't want to live where I come from. And part of the reason why I do what I do, it's because I just want climate migration to be in the past, to be in the songs, to be something that we don't have to face anymore, not in the future. And there are ways that we can do it. Solutions are there. There are people already doing and working to avoid that this happens. We just need to see them and to support them. This is the emotional part. It's very hard for me not to cry. Thank you for being present and hearing the personal side of my story. Now let's get to business. Because I am from this extremely hot region, I get sometimes, it distresses me, our approach to the climate crisis. What we have been doing is focusing on emissions. And we need to keep doing it. We need to stop deforestation. We need to keep fossil fuels on the ground. We need to do this. This is essential. This is not enough. What we need to do more of is to change and to challenge the systems of inequality, the systems that are causing injustice, like racism, the patriarchy, capitalism. We need to have the courage to look and to feel, okay, I need to put the Band-Aid on, I need to tackle the emissions, but I also need to talk about emotions. I need to understand what are the values that we have as humans and how we are doing this transition. For me, the climate crisis is an invitation for us to think about the what, meeting the targets, and the how. Who are we becoming in the process? Who are we? Who do we want to be for one another? This is the invitation. For me, the climate calling is material, scientific, technological, as much as spiritual. We need to start thinking about this way if we really want to address climate change. We need also to face the social dimension of the crisis. We need to talk about climate justice. The fact that those who are the most impacted by climate change, people from my region, are those who did the least to cause it. My community, it's a coastal community in the tropics. My community is likely to disappear if we don't start taking it seriously, not something for the future, but something that we need to consider in the present moment. How did I end up speaking so openly about emotions? First of all, I am Brazilian, so this is pretty easy for me, but I realized traveling abroad that sometimes this is not easy for everyone because, let's face it, like looking people in the eye and hugging them, it can be very uncomfortable. It can bring about like some emotions that we don't know how to deal with. But sometimes the hardest emotions are those that we need to face it. And this is what I want to do today. I want to talk about emotions. I want to talk about love. This is a loving story. And it starts like this. A few years ago, I was meditating, and I was feeling very much connected with my body. It was not one of these meditations like visualization or anything like this. I was just embodied, feeling present in my body. And I realized that I was not sitting on Earth, that I was Earth myself, that I was the organism. And then I started thinking, if I'm Earth, so climate action is actually self-love, is the most profound act of self-love that you can make it. And then I started thinking, but how can I love myself if what I'm hearing on the media is that humans are the cancer of the planet? This is all our fault. This is my fault, and I'm feeling very anxious. I'm not feeling loving at all. And I'm, of course, not the only one. If you look at the data, there are research with young people saying that 75% of us think that the future is scary. So it's very hard to find a place for love when you're feeling like this, when what you feel is fear. But then I'm a very simple person. I live in a very simple community, and all I see when I look around is love. I'm part of a community of women, and I started noticing, okay, I love my body, and I feel like these women, they also love their bodies, and they also love other women's bodies, because they group to protect each other from domestic violence, which is the biggest threat to our bodies in our region. My region in Brazil is one of the most violent to be a woman, because there is sexual violence, domestic violence, urban violence. So women start grouping together to protect each other, to sit in circle, to do like therapy together. And then what I was noticing is that some groups start to connect with each other, and they grow in complexity and in understanding of the threats of climate change, and they start creating groups to address ocean pollution and mangroves restoration. And I started seeing myself as someone who could nourish these networks, because they were already doing the hard work, and they just need to be seen, and they just need to be taken care of. So I think my work is actually very simple. I sit in circle with women, I listen to them, and I resource them to do climate work, climate adaptation work. This is a very innovative form of leadership if you think about it, because it's decentralized, it's across many different communities. The climate responses they give is very contextual, very realistic, so they are very sophisticated in the way they address the problem, and it's impressive how little they need to have so much impact. Just because they are so close to the problem, they already know what to do. So Filha do Sol is this organization that connects these women and nourishes these women. What I learned is that care and collaboration in my community, and everywhere I go that there are like women and frontline women, care and collaboration are their form of love in action. And they override competition and exhaustion, which is, if you think about, fear in action. So how we can embed these values, this is something that I have been thinking about a lot. Show you some... This is my grandpa, by the way. This is where I come from. As you see, most of the planet is yellow and orange, showing that the warming was from 0.5 to 1 Celsius degrees, and where I come from, it's from 1 to 2 Celsius degrees. And this is accelerating. These are some of the pictures of people like my ancestors who had to migrate because of the drought. And this is, as I said, like how population of extremely hot regions are growing from 1% to 19%, how 75 young people think the future is scary. This is where I come from, Piauí. In that region there, the environmental protection area of Delta do Parnaíba is where I'm working at now. This is one of the circle of women. This is how it all started. This is one day in my house. This is where I live. This is the front of my house. I asked them, just come, that I have a crazy idea. I want to know if you feel like doing it. And I remember us standing in circle and feeling the energy connecting our bodies as if it was a circle in itself, as if the energy was flowing in itself. So it felt to me that day that this idea was already there. It was the time for this idea to become a reality. But then, trying to zoom out of my community and of this beautiful story, how does the world looks like? Is there love? Is there space for love in the climate debate, in the climate conversation? And when I look at the data, I feel like not yet, because 90% of all climate finance goes to mitigation, cutting emissions, and just 10% goes to adaptation, taking care of the communities who are the most affected. Thousands of people die every day defending their land and the environment. And in the last 10 years, 75% of them have died in Latin America. There are almost no funding for people like me who are frontline environmentalists. Who is taking care of the caretakers? But when you go to the front lines, you'll see women like Ieda, who is designing a management plan, sustainable waste management plan for the region, and to protect 60 kilometers of the coast from plastic pollution. Women like Jessica and Michelle, who are doing research about the impact of climate change in their communities and learning how to translate all this knowledge in a way that communities can understand using music, using the way their ancestors used to transmit knowledge and wisdom, celebrating, because this is very much part of our culture. So people are more likely in our region to act on climate if they understand what's going on and if we connect with our traditional songs. So this is what they are doing. And in the process, they are including more Black women in climate leadership. This is the project of Rosângela. Rosângela is restoring 4 hectares of mangroves. She's this beautiful lady here. She's the daughter of a fisherman, and she is so committed to what she's doing that even when she runs out of funds, she goes to work as a teacher, as a side job, so she can pay for the mangroves restoration herself. And when I met Rosângela, I told her, you are doing the most important job in the whole planet. You know how mangroves are key for climate mitigation and adaptation initiatives. And you have to know that you are not alone. It feels like you are alone sometimes, and I know the feeling, but you are part of something called the climate movement. And I will make sure that you get resources from it, knowledge, funding, so you can keep doing what you're doing. It's, of course, a very, very hard job, because 90% of all philanthropic funding goes to organizations led by white people, 80% to organizations led by men, and only 0.2% focuses on women in the environment. So this is what made me to create Filha do Sol. Filha do Sol means daughter of the sun in Brazilian Portuguese. This is the way our territory, the state of Piauí, is referred to because of the extreme hot climate. It means, for me, also means this is a relationship. How do I say this in English? Sometimes it's hard to explain because it speaks so deeply to my heart. Filha do Sol, daughter of the sun, means that we are in relationship with the sun, with the weather, with the climate. They are not the enemy. We need to live in reciprocity and learn with nature. And this is very much part of our culture. This is our team, still growing. And our mission is uplift frontline women's leadership on ecosystems regeneration and climate justice. We have mobilized 100 women over the past year. 30 of them went through the climate leadership program, the Women's Climate School. 10 communities are being impacted and 300,000 hectares of protected area. This is our goal. This is the area that we want to start protecting. What's interesting about the climate school is that when I started, I felt like, okay, this is a very simple idea. People have done this before in environmental programs for women. We will teach them about climate justice, about all the terminologies. We will teach them how to design a program with action plan, budget, impact indicators, and things like this, so they are ready for investments and donations. And then that's it. This is enough. But then as I started sitting in circle with women, I realized it was much more than that. It was not only a climate school for women, it was a climate school by women, because there is a wisdom, there is a way of approaching the problem that is very unique to some of the frontline women, some of the women that we work with. And it happened one day when I was we were sitting in the circle, and one of the women said, what if we dream about what the earth needs? Like actually dream about it. We go to bed and we ask earth, what do you need? And this woman, she happens to be a Jungian psychologist, and she's doing her PhD on the science of dreams. And we are now realizing that there is something called collective dreaming or social dreaming, that we think we dream alone, we dream by ourselves, because this is the way we live in cities, isolated from our communities a lot of the times. But actually what scientists are learning is that we dream as a collective. If I ask you today to go home and ask, for example, to your dreams, what my community, what Santa Barbara needs, and we come together 1 month from now, and if we have an expert, a therapist like her, she can collect fragments of your dreams and give us an answer. This is a way of accessing knowledge that is available to human beings. But we are led to believe that this was not like as serious as the conscious mind. But the subconscious mind knows a lot, sometimes much more than our rationality, our thinking. So when I learned this, I realized, okay, there are other ways of learning about climate change, and these women do this intuitively. It's like a biomimicry. Reflecting and mirroring what nature already does. So I started doing some research, and I realized that maybe the world needs a women's climate school, and we need this not only in Brazil, but we need this kind of knowledge replicated everywhere. We need women's circles. We need people who can contribute to the climate conversation as well. So it's a two-way, how do they say that, two-way path? Like they learn about climate justice, they learn how to lead climate change, but they also have a lot to teach about values-based leadership. So I have been writing and distilling these values. What are these values? Like care, courage, community. What are these things that can shift the course of the climate conversation and move us faster, but also move us more gracefully towards meeting the targets, towards meeting the goals, so we can really evolve our consciousness as a species. This is not only beautiful, but it also makes a lot of sense economically speaking. And there are thousands of research by now showing that locally led climate approaches are more effective and efficient than top-down solutions. They are also key to diversifying climate work, that addressing problems at the root, for example, climate migration, is much less costly than addressing once it's happening. It's the same with the pandemic. The next pandemic is likely to come from the tropics, from extremely hot regions like mine, where there is interaction between biodiversity and urban expansion and heat. So all of this can be addressed in a much lower costly, much less costly than addressing once it happens. And as I said, and I will keep saying, there are people doing it, but they are invisible. They are holding the front lines of the climate crisis, but the way we designed our systems is so unfair that we don't know about them. There are people who have lives that are connected to yours, but the system that you are living in is designed to make you feel like these women don't matter and they are not connected to you, do not have to even think about them. But they are there. They are taking care of all of us. Also, there are a lot of data on women and climate. Often people ask me, but why just women? Why it's not just a climate school for all? A lot of research is showing now that gender gap is everywhere, including climate solutions. And every time that we include women, we have better results, for example, in sustainable extraction rules, in conservation and natural resource management. There is a data, for example, from the World Bank saying that if we just give women the same resources as men in agriculture, we can reduce hunger and poverty from 20 to 30% worldwide. Meaning that to produce more food, we don't need deforestation. We need gender equality. It's the other way. So I truly believe that women's leadership in general is one of the most undervalued and most effective solutions to a lot of things, including climate change. So how does the future can look like? Growing up, I would see at the side bed of my father, I would see a book, and the book had this title, The Audacity of Hope. And I saw this book many times in this picture of this man. I didn't know who he was. And I remember reading the words Barack Obama. And I remember my dad saying, look, you have to dream big. You have to be audacious. You have to be hopeful. And most of all, you have to act. And years later, I see myself sitting in front of President Obama in New York. And I was feeling so connected to him in this audacity, in this hope. And I also heard from David Simmons, who was the CEO of the Obama Foundation, that when President Obama invited him to the Oval Office to share about the vision of the Obama Foundation, he said, look, I need leaders all over the globe that can cross the last mile, that can be in places where I couldn't be. And the Obama Scholars are some of these leaders. So the reason why I'm saying this, it's because it requires so much audacity and so much hope to be here standing in front of you in the US, a Latina, a Brazilian woman who comes from Piauí. Piauí, I was told this morning that Piauí is the equivalent of rural Louisiana. So just for you to have a sense of, it's not only that I am from Brazil, I am from Piauí, I am from the poorest region of Brazil. I am from a place that growing up as a woman, the thing that I heard the most was, you cannot do this. You should be interested in other things, like getting married, having kids. But I always felt like love is such an expensive feeling. Yeah, I can love a man, I can love my kids, but it's more than this. I can love entire communities. I can love the earth. I can love the planet. And love is just not something like a romantic feeling or something naive. No, it's an attitude towards life. It's a value. It's something that it has so much strength, and it moves us. In my journey as a climate leadership, I was moved by fear and anxiety and everything, but I never had the same creativity and audacity that I developed over the past 3 years when I started acting from a place of love, from a place of hope and audacity and everything. So what I'm doing today is not only loving these women, loving Rosângela. Rosângela is at this moment we are speaking here in the US, and she is back in Brazil, mobilizing all the women of the region, all the shellfish catchers and the fisher women, and she is promoting something called the Amazonian Dialogues, how women and territory come together in the Amazon and in the rest of the region to protect each other, to protect our land, and to save the planet. So this presentation today is dedicated to her because she's the one really doing the hard work. I feel like I said many things. I didn't say most of the things that I wanted to say. But I realize also that sometimes when you speak about emotions and love, it takes some time for you to integrate all this knowledge and also to make sense of it. Like, what are we speaking about, like climate change, and what's the place of it in the climate conversation? So my invitation is for you to think about it, to feel like how does it make sense in your life, and also to think about what would be an embodied version of climate action, something that I can act like, what do I touch? What do I see? What do I smell that is surrounding me? Not as something far distant in the future, like 1.5 Celsius degrees or things like this, but what touches me? What's my climate story? I may not have, my grandpa may not be a climate migrant, but I'm sure there is some climate story in my life, in my family. How do I connect to it? I feel like once you do it, you will be moved from a different place. And then we will be speaking about emissions and emotions. Then we will be altura. Then we will be up to the challenge that we are facing as a species. I would like you to honor your culture. I would like to thank you for welcoming me at your country. And I will do this reading a poem from the 24th Nobel Poet Laureate from the United States, Ada Limon. The reason why I'm doing this is that because I want to invite you to show love for yourselves now, if you feel like taking a deep breath, if you want to close your eyes, if you feel comfortable with, just be present for you, like you are here. It's a Friday night. In a few minutes, we are celebrating my birthday. If you wanna come. But for now, this moment is for you to be here, to integrate everything that you heard, everything that you went through this week. Just be present. Just for now, there is no future. There is nowhere to go. You can just maybe choose a part of your body that you want to express love, that you want to feel like you are covering with attention and care. And I will read this poem from Ada Limon called Dead Stars. Out here, there is a bowing, even the trees are doing. Winter's icy hand at the back of all of us. Black bark, sleek yellow leaves, a kind of stillness that feels so mute it's almost in another ear. I am a hearth of spiders these days, a nest of trying. We point out the stars that make Orion as we take out the trash. The rolling containers, a song of suburban thunder. It's almost romantic as we adjust the waxy blue recycling bin until you say, Mom, we should really learn some new constellations. And it's true. We keep forgetting about Antlia, Centaurus, Draco, Lacerta, Hydra, Lyra, Lynx. But mostly, we are forgetting we are dead stars too. My mouth is full of dust, and I wish to reclaim the rising, to lean in the spotlight of street light with you, toward what's larger within us, toward how we were born. Look, we are not unspectacular things. We've come this far, survived this much. What would happen if we decided to survive more, to love harder? What if we stood up with our synapses and flesh and said no, no to the rising tides, stood for the many mute mouths of the sea, of the land? What would happen if we used our bodies to bargain for the safety of others, for Earth, if we declared a clean night, if we stopped being terrified? If we launched our demands into the sky, made ourselves so big people could point to us with the arrows they make in their minds, rolling their trash bins out after all of this is over. Muito obrigada. Thank you.
Thank you guys again. Can we have another round of applause for Dr. Flavia Maya?
Thank you so much, Flavia and Nadra. Let's give another applause for Dr. Maya. Wonderful. I every time I see Flavia, we're friends now, but I'm always still so inspired and still get chills every time I hear her share her wisdom and hear her present. And so thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. This space is available to rent with discounted rates for nonprofits, B Corps, educational institutions, and government agencies. Visit envirohubsb.org to learn more. And thank you again for coming to tonight's event with Dr. Flavia Maya. We are certainly inspired around women-led climate action, and we hope you all are too. If you haven't already, please join the CEC newsletter and engage with us on your favorite social media channels to follow CEC's climate action along the Central Coast and get updates on future events like these. And we wish you a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you soon.